Everywhere you look, the message is the same. Be happy, think positive, manifest joy, follow your passion. Modern life sells happiness as a product, a destination, a peak we must reach, a lifestyle we're supposed to project. And if you aren't constantly chasing joy, you must be doing life wrong. But Arthur Schopenhauer didn't just reject this idea, he called it a lie. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. He wasn't offering hope, he wasn't offering comfort. He was offering clarity, the kind that burns through illusions. To Schopenhauer, the problem isn't that people fail to be happy. The problem is that we're told we're supposed to be. That if we're not smiling, striving, winning, evolving, then something is broken inside us. But what if the truth is this? Happiness is not the default. It is the exception. Not a permanent state to live in, but a temporary absence of pain. Schopenhauer didn't see life as a joyful dance. He saw it as a brutal, honest current, dragging all beings forward through struggle, tension, and need. And in that current, we're told to chase rainbows. He found that absurd, not because he hated life, but because he refused to lie about what it is. Modern culture says, create your dream reality. Schopenhauer says, stop dreaming. Look at what's actually here. Real happiness, he believed, is not pleasure. It is relief, not excitement, but escape from pain. This isn't nihilism, it's not despair, it's philosophical honesty, a brutal compassion that says, maybe you're not failing. Maybe the world just isn't built to keep you comfortable. This is the starting point, not the conclusion. And if you're ready to strip away the illusions of positivity and pleasure chasing, Schopenhauer will give you something better than happiness. He'll give you truth. We're taught to believe life is about happiness. That existence is a gift, that the world is good, or at least meant to be. But Arthur Schopenhauer looked at life and saw something different, not through cynicism, but through unflinching honesty. He believed life wasn't built for our joy. It was built for survival, for continuation, for craving. All life is suffering, not because we sinned, not because we failed, but because of something more fundamental, desire. To live is to want, and to want is to hurt. Every being, from the insect to the human, is driven by lack, by hunger, by heat, by thirst, by longing. We wake in need, we move in need, we die still needing something. Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. Schopenhauer, we escape pain for a moment and call it peace, but peace becomes dull and dullness becomes suffering in disguise. So we chase again, not because we are bad, but because we are wired to want. And the more intelligent we are, the more deeply we suffer, because we are aware of the futility, yet still bound to the chase. Schopenhauer saw this everywhere. In nature, one animal eating another to live. In cities, men and women chasing careers, partners, prestige. In art, people searching for meaning in beauty because real life feels too brutal. To Schopenhauer, life was not a grand design built for our fulfillment. It was a relentless storm. And we, the creatures cursed with consciousness, not even pleasure can free us, because it dies as soon as it is fulfilled. Happiness, then, is not something life offers freely. It's something we experience only by accident, in rare moments when desire pauses and pain temporarily withdraws. Modern minds reject this. It sounds too dark, too hopeless. But for Schopenhauer, it was not cruelty. It was clarity. Life doesn't disappoint us because it's unfair. It disappoints us because we expect too much from it. And the ones who suffer most aren't the ones with the hardest lives, but the ones who were told life would make them happy. We chase happiness like it's a destination. We think if we can just earn enough, love enough, become enough, we'll finally feel full. And sometimes we reach it. We win. We succeed. We get what we thought we wanted, but then what? The pleasure fades, the high passes, and something starts to itch again. We feel restless, empty, as if happiness betrayed us. But Schopenhauer would say, no, happiness didn't betray you. Your expectation of it did. Pleasure was never built to last. To him, the problem isn't pain. The problem is that we believe pleasure should stay. Pleasure is never as pleasant as we expected it to be. He saw that joy is brief relief, a short window between two waves of need. We enjoy food, but only because we were hungry. We enjoy rest, only because we were tired. We enjoy love because we once felt unloved. Remove the pain, and the pleasure collapses. Joy doesn't exist on its own. It needs suffering to frame it. But modern life doesn't want to hear this. We're told to chase peak experiences, to climb from one moment of ecstasy to the next. And when the pleasure fades, we think we failed. We think we need more stimulation, more success, more dopamine. But it doesn't work, because the more we chase pleasure, the more we amplify the pain of its absence. To Schopenhauer, this was the essence of delusion. We don't suffer because we lack pleasure. We suffer because we expect it to stay. So what does real happiness look like? Not fireworks, not peak states, but a valley, a pause in the storm, a moment of peace when desire lets go and the pain fades into silence. It's not euphoric, it's not exciting, it's just still. And in Schopenhauer's eyes, that stillness is the closest thing to joy we'll ever know. At the core of everything Schopenhauer taught is one brutal truth. We suffer because we want, not because life is cruel, not because people hurt us, but because we are creatures of craving. He called it the will, not just the will of a person, but a force beneath all life. A blind, relentless power that drives all living things. To hunger, to breed, to strive, to conquer, to survive. The will has no logic. It doesn't care about peace. It doesn't seek fulfillment. It just wants endlessly. Schopenhauer wrote, "All willing springs from lack, from suffering." The moment you want something, you are no longer free. You feel the pain of not having it. You feel the stress of chasing it. And even when you get it, you feel the fear of losing it. And so the will keeps you on a leash. Every goal you set, every plan you chase, every identity you craft, it's all the will wearing different masks. You think you're choosing freely, but beneath it all, the will chooses you. It moves you like a puppet, driving you forward through desire, then punishing you with dissatisfaction. This is why pleasure is so short, why peace is so rare, because even in your quietest moments, the will whispers more. It is the engine of nature. It is the cause of beauty and brutality. It births galaxies and decays them, and yet, in a human being, it becomes a curse because we know what it's doing and we can't stop it. This is Schopenhauer's great insight. To live is to serve the will, and to suffer is to wake up to that fact. The question is not how to escape suffering completely. That's impossible. The question is, can we see the will for what it is and learn to stop feeding it? Because as long as we want, we will bleed. When Schopenhauer looked at the world, he saw suffering in motion, people chasing wealth, chasing love, chasing status, chasing pleasure, chasing distraction. He saw the will everywhere, disguised as ambition, romance, and success. But that was the 1800s. Now, we've put the will in our pockets, we carry it in our apps, we refresh it every few seconds. Every scroll is another itch, every notification is a craving, every like is a drop of dopamine, and a hook for more. We live in a world where stimulation is constant, but satisfaction never arrives. Phones, goals, metrics about goals, always doing, always scrolling, always becoming. And yet, we're drowning in anxiety, burnt out, Number Schopenhauer didn't know the word dopamine, but he didn't need to. He saw this coming. Human life must be some kind of mistake. He understood the sickness before we gave it a name. Because what is burnout, if not the exhaustion of endless craving? What is anxiety, if not the soul's revolt against the will's constant pressure? Modern culture tells us be more, do more, get more. But Schopenhauer knew the more we feed the will, the more violently it controls us. We believe we're becoming evolved, optimized, high-performing humans. But in truth, we've become more entangled. We aren't solving suffering. We're layering it in pixels, algorithms, hustle, and hype. We are not escaping pain. We are covering it with noise. And the silence beneath it still waits. Schopenhauer's warning is this: the world will keep offering you more to chase, but until you confront the chase itself, you will never know peace. When pain rises, modern culture hands you a script. Just be positive. Gratitude is the key. Reframe your thoughts. Manifest joy. And for a moment, it helps. The sun shines. You write a gratitude list. You drink your affirmation tea. But then it hits again. The craving, the hollow, the quiet ache behind your smile. And now you feel not just sad, but guilty for not being happy. The world told you to be positive, and now it feels like your failure that you're still in pain. Schopenhauer saw this pressure long before it had Instagram captions. To him, positive thinking is not a solution. It's a mask. It says, you can fix this if you try hard enough. You can escape pain with mindset. You can beat reality with a better mood. But reality doesn't care how hard you try to spin it. The will still drives you. The lack still bites. The silence still hurts. Schopenhauer didn't offer affirmations. He offered acceptance, not of defeat, but of design. Don't lie to yourself, he would say. Face what this life really is. And what is it? It is unstable. It is restless. It is full of hunger, loss, and change. Positive thinking says, focus on the good. Schopenhauer says, goodness is fleeting, but pain is guaranteed, so learn how to sit with it. That's not pessimism, that's realism, that's power, because when you stop pretending the pain will vanish, you start learning how to carry it without collapsing. And in that shift, you become stronger than the world's optimism could ever make you. When most people hear happiness, they think of a mountaintop, a moment of bliss, success, pleasure, laughter, peace. But for Schopenhauer, happiness was not a peak to reach. It was a pause in the storm. Not something you climb toward, but something you slip into when the pain finally lets go. He saw happiness not as a state, but as a silence. A moment when the cravings stop, when the mind stops chasing, when the will goes quiet. That's it. No fireworks, no euphoria, just stillness. The greatest wisdom is not in seeking joy, but in escaping pain. This is why pleasure fails us, because it's loud, it's fleeting, and it demands repetition. But relief is soft, it's honest. It doesn't scream, it settles. Schopenhauer believed this is the closest thing to happiness we ever truly experience. Not a big win, not a perfect day, but a moment where suffering steps aside, even just for a breath. That's why we love sleep. That's why we crave silence. That's why we long for peace. Because when pain stops, we don't need more. We just need nothing. Modern culture hates this idea. It's not marketable. It doesn't sell courses or hashtags, but it's the deepest relief your soul can feel. Not more, just less. Not the peak, but the pause. And in that pause, you may realize you were never meant to be endlessly happy. You were only meant to suffer a little less, and be okay with that. By now, you've heard Schopenhauer's message. Life is suffering. Desire is bondage. Happiness is the pause, not the prize. And yet, something inside you might be pushing back. Isn't this too dark? Too passive? Too hopeless? You're not wrong for feeling that. In fact, that's exactly what the ego wants you to feel, because the ego has been trained to chase growth, improvement, success, fulfillment, legacy, progress. All the modern words we use to mask the will's hunger. The ego doesn't want stillness. It wants a narrative of triumph. It says, don't stop desiring. Desire more intelligently. But Schopenhauer says you're still on the leash. You've just polished the collar. This is why we reject his philosophy, not because it's wrong, but because it shatters the myth we built around effort and becoming. We don't want relief. We want identity. We want to say, I built this. I became this. I conquered that. But Schopenhauer unmasks that too. Your success, still driven by craving. Your goals, still born of lack. Your victories, still temporary, followed by new hungers. We reject Schopenhauer because we want more than peace. We want to matter. But here's the truth. The more we crave meaning through striving, the more the will owns us. And so we fight this message because it doesn't flatter us. It doesn't crown us kings. It doesn't promise transformation. It only offers release. But if we can drop the pride, silence the ego, and truly listen, then what sounds like defeat starts to feel like freedom. This isn't a philosophy for people who want to win. It's for those who want to be still. And when you're ready for that, Schopenhauer becomes less of a pessimist and more of a quiet liberator. Schopenhauer didn't just describe suffering. He didn't stop at diagnosis. He offered a path, not to happiness, but to something more realistic and more powerful. Peace. Not the kind you perform, the kind you feel when the will falls silent. And how do we reach that peace? Schopenhauer gave us two lifelines, detachment and suspension. 1. Detachment. Want less, suffer less. This isn't about becoming numb, it's about becoming clear. The more we want, the more we bleed. But if we can lower our desires, not give them up all at once, but gently let them go. Want less praise, want less control, want less stimulation, want less from people, outcomes, the world. Then the will loses its grip. And in that loosening, we find space. 2. Suspension. The power of still moments. There are rare moments in life when the will disappears, not because we crushed it, but because something lifted us above it. Schopenhauer believed these moments could be found in art, when beauty arrests our hunger and we just see music, when the structure of desire is replaced by melody nature, when we observe instead of strive, compassion, when we stop wanting for ourselves and feel for another. In those moments, we don't want, we just are. And for Schopenhauer, those are the closest we ever get to peace. Not because the world changed, but because we stopped fighting it for a moment. It's not spiritual ecstasy. It's not a perfect meditation. It's not a guru's smile or a monk's silence. It's this. The will quiets, the world fades. You breathe and nothing hurts. It may last only seconds, but it's real. And that is enough. This is what Schopenhauer left us. Not a way out of pain, but a way to sit beside it without fear. Not a life of happiness, but a life of honesty and stillness. And in a world that constantly screams for more, that is a radical act. Schopenhauer lived in 19th century Germany, but his soul felt ancient, felt still. And while most European philosophers argued about logic, reason, and progress, Schopenhauer was reading the Upanishads. He was studying Buddhism. And what he found there shocked him, because the truths he discovered through suffering, these ancient traditions had already known for centuries. That life is suffering, that craving is the cause, that liberation begins where desire ends. He read Buddhist texts that said, desire is the root of all sorrow. He studied Hindu writings that declared, he who is free from desire is at peace. And instead of rejecting them, he honored them. In the whole world, he wrote, well, there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of the Upanishads. He wasn't trying to westernize the East. He was trying to humble the West, because where the West told us to conquer, build, expand, the East taught surrender. Where Western philosophy said, man must master nature, Eastern wisdom said, master yourself. And in this, Schopenhauer saw a mirror, a validation, that he was not alone in seeing through the illusion of progress, positivity, and pride. He saw the will in every tradition that tried to name it, tanha in Buddhism, the thirst avidya in Hinduism, the ignorance of true self maya, the illusion of the world. These weren't exotic beliefs, they were parallel truths. Schopenhauer knew the West had strategies, but the East had wisdom. Where Western thought ends with effort, Eastern thought begins with letting go, not to win the game of life, but to stop being ruled by it. And in that surrender, in that ancient emptiness, Schopenhauer found something rare in European philosophy. Peace without pride, power without possession, a life not of dominance, but of release. We live in the age of more productivity, more progress, more likes, more followers, more everything. We're told to hustle, to grind, to level up. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not wanting something, what are you even living for? But Schopenhauer would look at this and say, you're not living, you're spinning. He'd see our culture not as a triumph of progress, but a machine of craving, a world where shopping is therapy, hustle is holiness, rest is guilt, stillness is shame. And what does it create? Burnout that looks like ambition, anxiety that looks like drive, addiction that looks like success. We don't know how to stop because we've been told that stopping is failure. But Schopenhauer knew when you build a world around desire, you also build a world around suffering. Look around. The most connected generation feels the most alone. The most motivated generation is drowning in anxiety. The most empowered generation still feels broken. Why? Because we're not feeding our souls. We're feeding the will over and over, scroll by scroll. Dopamine hit by dopamine hit. Not because we're evil, but because we've been trained to believe that desire is life. Keep wanting, keep moving, keep becoming. But Schopenhauer flips that. Wanting is the problem, craving is the cage, becoming is the trap. Not because striving is immoral, Baxter, but because it never ends. We don't even want the things we chase. We want the feeling of wanting because we don't know who we are without it. We're not addicted to things, we're addicted to desire itself. And this is why no matter what we achieve, we still feel incomplete. Schopenhauer saw this 200 years ago, but now we've built a world that worships the very force that destroys us, and we wonder why peace feels so far away. What if you've been lied to? Not by a person, not by a system, but by an idea. That peace comes from getting what you want, the perfect job, the perfect partner, the right number, the right body, the right version of yourself. That once you arrive, you'll finally be free. But Schopenhauer cuts through that dream. He says, "The wise man seeks not pleasure, but freedom from pain. Not because pleasure is bad, but because it's fleeting. It burns bright and then burns out. But acceptance is quiet. And it stays. It doesn't thrill. It doesn't excite. It just whispers, this is enough. Even if it hurts. Even if it isn't what I imagined." Schopenhauer believed that true peace begins not when life becomes perfect, but when we stop demanding that it should. Not when suffering ends, but when we no longer resist it. Modern spirituality tells you to heal, to rise, to manifest. Schopenhauer tells you to stop fighting the truth, that this life will never be free from loss, desire, boredom, and pain. And the more you make peace with that, the less power the will has over you, because every time you accept what is, the craving loosens, the grip weakens, and something inside you settles. That is not failure, that is freedom. Not the kind that looks good on camera, but the kind that lets you sit in silence and feel nothing. No high, no hunger, just stillness. So ask yourself, what if peace isn't pleasure? What if joy isn't the goal? What if happiness isn't something you chase, but something you find in the space between the cravings? And if that's true, then you're not behind, you're not broken, you've just been chasing a kind of happiness that never really existed. If this was your first time hearing Schopenhauer, you might think he's trying to depress you. He's not. He's trying to free you from expectations that never deliver, from illusions that exhaust you, from promises the world can't keep. He's not stealing your happiness. He's releasing you from the pressure to find it where it doesn't exist. Because you are not broken for suffering. You are not failing because you're tired. You are not lost because joy feels rare. You are human, and life is heavier than anyone told you it would be. Schopenhauer's philosophy is not a blueprint to fix life. It's a permission slip to stop fighting it. It's not meant to make you smile. It's meant to make you still. And in that stillness, or in that honest, stripped down awareness that this is all a little too much, and it's okay to not win every day, you feel something strange, not happiness, not bliss, but release. The cravings loosen. The pressure fades. The will quiets, and your shoulders drop. For the first time in years, Schopenhauer didn't give us a map, he gave us a mirror. And in it, you don't see a person who needs to improve. You see a soul that has suffered, kept going, and now finally has the right to let go. So no, this isn't despair. This is freedom from illusion. This is truth without decoration. This is peace without needing more. And sometimes that's the most honest kind of happiness we'll ever know.